Ever feel like you need a shortcut? Like you want to understand something complex, but you don't want to get bogged down in a ton of details.
Right.
That's what we're all about here on the deep dive. We take a whole bunch of information, stuff that we think you'd find interesting, and we pull out the really important stuff.
We're like your guides to making sense of it all quickly and, effectively.
Exactly. And today we're going deep into how we evaluate these large language models, LLMs.
Ah, yes.
We've got this super insightful report. It's called Prompt Engineering is Complicated and Contingent.
Mm,
And we've got some background notes too, just to kind of round things out.
yeah.
And we're going to explore something that might change how you think about AI, like the impact of even small changes in how we ask these systems questions.
It's really fascinating. And our goal today is really clear. We want to figure out the most important stuff about how AI performance is measured.
Okay.
But also, we're going to shed some light on this thing that people don't always think about, the role of the wording, the formatting of our prompts.
Right, right.
Those little details can make a big difference.
They can. They really can. And we're going to try and deliver some of those aha moments.
Yes,
Leave you feeling like, wow, I learned something new today. I see things differently now.
exactly. Informed.
Okay. So, first big takeaway, this report makes it clear when you're judging how well an AI is doing, there's no single simple score. It's not like, oh, higher number, better AI. It's more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it's definitely not that straightforward. What I found really interesting is how rigorous the researchers were in the study. They didn't just, test the AI models once and call it a day.
Right.
They took two pretty well-known LLMs, GPT-4o, specifically the version from August 6, 2024, and GPT-4o Mini from July 18, 2024, and they put them through a really tough benchmark. It's called GPQA Diamond.
Okay.
And this benchmark is not a walk in the park. We're talking PhD level stuff here, biology, physics, chemistry, challenging stuff.
And to put that in perspective, even PhDs in those fields, they only average around 65 to 74% accuracy on these questions.
It's hard.
And people who are skilled but not PhDs, they only get about 34% right, even with the whole internet to help them.
Yeah, it's seriously tough. So you can imagine this was a big test for the AI.
Absolutely. And what did they do to, really test the AI's reliability?
They did something really smart. They asked each of those super difficult questions 100 times, not just once, 100 times.
Wow.
This way they could see how consistent the AI's answers were. It's way more insightful than just looking at one attempt, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And because they had all these responses, 100 for each question, they had to figure out what passing even meant. And they didn't just pick one definition, they actually looked at three different standards for passing,
Okay.
getting the answer 100% right across all 100 tries,
That's tough.
getting it right 90% of the
A
time,
little more forgiving.
and getting it right at least 51% of the time. So, a majority.
Majority rules, I see.
And if you think about how AI might be used in the real world, you can see why these different standards are important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like if you're thinking about an AI diagnosing a medical condition where even one mistake is a big deal,
Huge.
you'd want to see that 100% accuracy, ideally.
Of course. Yeah, you don't want any mistakes there.
But in a different situation, maybe you're using AI to brainstorm creative ideas,
Right.
and you just need some generally good suggestions. A 90% or even a 51% accuracy rate might be totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it might even be on par with, how often a human would get it right. We make mistakes too.
Exactly. Exactly. We're not perfect. And the researchers also pointed out that some ways of evaluating AI that are common in computer science,
Okay.
dot pass at 100, where just one right answer out of 100 is a pass,
Hmm.
dot or consensus at 100, where the most frequent answer wins, even if it's not the majority. They said those might not be the best ways to judge how reliable an AI would be in real life.
I see. Yeah.
If an AI is mostly wrong but gets it right once out of 100 times,
That's lucky, not reliable.
right, or if it slightly favors one wrong answer over a bunch of others.
Is that something you can really depend on?
Exactly. And that brings up a really important question. What do we actually want from AI in the real world?
That's a good question. What do we expect from it?
Are we okay with lucky guesses, or do we need AI to be consistent, dependable, give us the right answer most of the time?
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it?
And the researchers argue that these tougher standards, the 100%, 90%, and 51% thresholds, those give us a much better idea of that reliability.
Makes sense. You want to know how often you can actually trust it.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting. When they used those stricter standards, the 100% and 90% accuracy, Neither GPT-4o nor GPT-4o Mini did much better than if they were just randomly guessing.
Wow, really?
And remember, this was a four-choice test, so random guessing would get you about 25% correct.
Right, just by chance.
And the AI only did clearly better than random chance when they lowered the bar to that 51% threshold.
That's surprising. I mean, you'd think these sophisticated models would be way better than random guessing, right?
You would. So it really makes you think about those impressive AI scores we hear about all the time.
Yeah. What do those scores really mean?
Right. A high score on one test doesn't automatically mean it's going to be accurate all the time, especially when we need it to be almost perfect.
Especially for those really important tasks. It's like you said earlier, medical diagnosis, things like that.
Exactly. So the definition of good performance, it can change a lot depending on how you're measuring it.
That's a really important takeaway for our listeners. Don't just take those AI performance claims at face value. Look deeper. Understand how they got those numbers.
Okay, so we've seen that figuring out how well an AI is doing, it's not as easy as we might think. Now let's look at the second big thing this report covers, how we ask AI questions, prompting. And it's more complicated than you might think.
It really is. The researchers tested 4 different ways of asking those same PhD level questions, like different ways of phrasing them.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so the first approach was what they called a baseline formatted prompt. It's kind of like giving the AI specific instructions, like what is the correct answer to this question? And then at the end, they'd tell the AI how to format the answer, like the correct answer is insert answer here.
Oh, okay, so very specific.
Very specific. And they also gave it a system level prompt, telling the AI to act like a very intelligent assistant and to follow instructions carefully.
Got it. So that was the first way. What about the other ways?
Right, so then they tried an unformatted prompt.
Okay.
They took away that instruction at the end about how to format the response. So it's more like how you or I would naturally ask a question. Right?
Yeah, just a normal question.
Exactly. And then they had a polite prompt where they started the question with, please answer the following question.
Okay.
And finally, a commanding prompt, which was more like, I order you to answer the following question. So they wanted to see if being polite or demanding made a difference.
Interesting. And what did they find?
Well, here's something really interesting. When they got rid of those formatting instructions, with the unformatted prompt,
Yeah.
both AI models actually got worse. Their performance dropped. Specifically, GPT-4o's performance at that strict 1% correct level, it went down by 8.6%.
Hmm.
And GPT-4o minis, that one fell by a whole 12.1%. And these weren't just random fluctuations. The researchers said these drops were statistically significant, which means it's really unlikely they were just due to chance.
Wow. So that really shows how important it is to give clear instructions.
It does. It suggests that at least when you're dealing with these kinds of complex questions,
Yeah.
giving the AI clear formatting cues can really help it perform better.
So you might think that being less rigid and letting the AI answer more naturally is better,
You'd think so, right?
but this research actually suggests the opposite.
Exactly. Sometimes a little more structure can go a long way.
Interesting. Okay, now for the politeness versus command thing, what happened there?
All right, so this is where it gets kind of tricky. When they looked at the overall performance across all 198 questions,
Okay.
there was basically no difference between the polite please prompts and the commanding I order prompts.
Huh.
But when they looked at individual questions,
Yeah.
they found some pretty big variations. For some questions, one way of phrasing led to the right answer over 60% more often.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is. They actually have all the data for each question in the supplementary materials of the report if you want to see it for yourself.
So what does that mean for someone who's actually using these AI models?
Well, it means that, you might spend all this trying to craft the perfect polite prompt.
Right, right. Trying to be nice to the AI.
Exactly. Thinking it's going to make the AI perform better overall.
Yeah.
But this research suggests that it might make a real difference for very specific questions, and you wouldn't necessarily know which ones ahead of time.
So you're saying there's no magic word that suddenly makes the AI super smart?
Right. It's not like the report actually says prompting tricks like politeness are not universal. Prompt variations, although impactful at the question level, are dwarfed by overall model characteristics.
So even though those little tweaks in wording can change how the AI answers on a question by question basis,
Yeah,
it doesn't change how capable the model is overall.
exactly. That's the main takeaway here.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture. So what about the consistency of the answers? Did they always get the same answer for the same question?
That's another really important point. Because they asked each question 100 times, they could see how often the AI would give different answers to the same question, even when they used the same prompt.
Oh, wow. So even with the same question, the AI could be inconsistent.
Yeah, unfortunately. They found a surprising amount of variation. The report actually says LMs can be inconsistent when answering questions, By looking at 100 attempts, not just one, we find that other benchmarking efforts can substantially overestimate model reliability, which is highly variable.
So what does that mean for people who are using AI in real life?
Well, it means you have to be careful about relying on just one answer from the AI,
Right.
especially if it's something important. Because if it's giving you different answers each time you ask the same question, how can you be sure which one is right?
That's a great point. It makes you think about how much you can really trust these models.
It does. And it highlights why this kind of thorough testing with lots of repeated attempts is so important. It gives you a much more realistic picture of how reliable the model is.
So it's not enough to just see that the AI got one question right. You need to know how it performs over many attempts.
Exactly. Consistency is key.
Okay, so to wrap up all this prompting stuff, it seems like the main point is that even though different ways of prompting can have an effect,
Uh-huh.
the AI's core capabilities are what really matter in the end.
That's a great summary. You can tweak your prompts, especially when it comes to clear formatting.
Right.
And that can make a difference in some cases. But it's not going to magically transform a weaker model into a super intelligent one.
It's like trying to make a car go faster by just changing the way you turn the steering wheel.
Exactly. You need a more powerful engine for that.
Okay, so what's the final takeaway for our listeners today?
All right, let's sum it all up. First, don't just blindly trust one single AI benchmark score. Dig a little deeper. Figure out how they got that score, what it really means.
Okay, that's a good one. What else?
Second, be clear and specific when you're prompting the AI. Tell it exactly what you want.
Okay.
Third, don't get too hung up on those prompting tricks, like being super polite to the AI. Those might help in some cases, but they're not a magic solution.
Right, right. And lastly,
Lastly, remember that LLMs can be surprisingly inconsistent. They might give you different answers to the same question, so don't just rely on one answer. Think critically.
so as you're out there using these AI-powered tools, hearing all these claims about how amazing they are,
Yeah,
remember to look closely. How did they measure those amazing capabilities? How are people actually interacting with these tools? It's all about the details.
it is. It really is. And those details can make a big difference.
So, what questions does all this raise for you about the future of AI? How are we going to evaluate these models as they get more and more sophisticated? This is just the beginning of the conversation. There's a lot more to explore.
There is. It's an exciting time to be thinking about all of this. And a little bit scary too, right?
A little bit, yeah, but that's what makes it so interesting. So keep thinking, keep learning, and we'll see you next time on the deep dive.
See you then.